In this lesson, we will be talking about how to draw, how to use the pen tool, nodes, handles, and segments. So understanding Bezier paths, which we can realize with the pen tool, and how to work with them is essential for working in Inkscape. So let's look first at the pen tool, which we will find here in the toolbar on the left. And by scrolling down, it will be the first one here, Draw Bezier Curves and Straight Lines, with the shortcut letter B on our keyboard. So let's select that. I have prepared in this document a few very simple shapes that can help us trace, practice using the pen tool, and generally see how it works. The pen tool is useful for drawing and modifying paths and shapes. In Inkscape, paths are made up of Bezier curves. So a Bezier curve is made by 4 points. If I click on the node tool, so the second one here in our toolbar, edit paths by nodes, which we can also select by clicking the letter N on our keyboard, and then click on one of our shapes like so, you will notice these 4 shapes at the edges. But if we go up here and select this icon, Show Path Outline, then we will notice the path that is composing this shape. Here we can see these 4 points that control the curve. The points that are highlighted with little squares are known as nodes. They mark the end points of a curve. If we click on another shape, you will notice that these points have different shapes. So the points that are marked by this larger square are called handles. The distance between a node and a handle create a curve like so. If we move it, we can see how the curve changes. But now let's see how we can draw a path with the pen tool. Let's select the tool here, and then let's draw a straight line with the tool selected. So we can do that by clicking anywhere on our screen and then dragging our mouse out like so. So you will notice that this red line is appearing. That will be our path. So then we click again, and if we select Enter on our keyboard, you will notice now that it has created this. If you notice here on the top right corner, we have Fill in Stroke. This will tell us what the stroke color is, so yellow, and what the fill color is, so also yellow. But let's start tracing these shapes to see how we can use the pen tool more effectively. I will open up the layers panel that I have here on the right, and under this layer here, I will lock it so that we can trace our shapes without moving them or changing them. So I will select a new layer, we will draw on this layer, and don't worry, we will have a lesson dedicated to layers in the future videos. For now, all we need to know is that we have these shapes on one. If we click them, nothing will happen, nothing will move. So let's take our pen tool again, and let's try and trace this shape here. Let's just first change the color very quickly. So let's zoom in a bit on our shape, make sure that we have our pen tool selected, and start trying to trace this shape. So we can start from the top right corner, click, and then start dragging. Notice that now I am just dragging my mouse. If we want to have a straighter line, or if we want to have vertical, horizontal lines, all we need to do is select our Control key on our keyboard. And notice now that when I'm moving my keyboard, the line is moving at 15-degree increments. So that will make it easier to have straighter or more vertical, horizontal, or diagonal lines. But for now, we don't need that. Let's just try and make it as similar as possible. And then again, we'll click again and then drag, click, drag. And when we arrive here, we will notice that the handle will light up in a different color. And that is to indicate that we can close the shape. So we can click again. And notice now how we have a perfect shape similar to the other one. we can take our Select and Transform tool and move it around. And now we can see that we have two shapes the same. But let's try creating and tracing a more complex shape like this one. So again, let's go and take our pen tool. And in this case, we're going to have to create curves. So we can start here, again, click. And since this is a curve, we can either decide to click here or at the bottom and try to make a curve. So let's try and click here. And then before releasing, we start dragging our mouse. This will help to create a curve, as you may notice. If I drag it out more, we can notice this red line more that indicates the curve of our path. So we drag it out and then we release. Now it will continue indicating that we can create another curve. So let's just click here. And then again, let's drag it out to a similar spot. Click, and before releasing, start dragging out our mouse like so. And then again, release and drag it all the way to here. And click, and before releasing, drag it out a little bit more. So don't worry that this isn't perfect, because then we can take our node tool, so the second one that is here, and modify how these curves look. So you will notice that by clicking, all of these different nodes will have handles. And these are helpful to be able to change the way our curves are. So for example, we could drag this down, and that's already a lot better. And then we can change this like so. So for now, all we need to do is select and play around with these handles that we have here. Once we have a shape that we like, we can leave it and select anywhere on our screen. And then let's move on and try and trace another shape. But we can select it and move it and see how similar it is. But now let's move on and let's try tracing this shape, as it is composed by curved lines and also straight lines. So let's take our Draw Bezier tool again and start selecting where we want to start our shape. So we can start from the straight lines. Some keyboard shortcuts that are useful to know are, for example, Shift L to create a straight line. So Shift L on our keyboard to make sure it's straight. And again, selecting Control on our keyboard, we can make sure to have perfectly vertical or horizontal lines. So select, click again, click, drag again, and then Control on our keyboard. So now we have all of the straight lines drawn out. Another keyboard shortcut that we can use is Shift and the letter U on our keyboard. And this is to make curved lines. So notice how that automatically made a handle appear. So now that we know that we have a curved line started, we can select a point. So here, what can be useful is selecting a midpoint like so. Click and start dragging. Again, don't worry, because we will be changing how these curves look with the node tool, but we can go like so. And then again, click and drag before releasing. And now we have created a shape. Another useful keyboard shortcut is selecting the letter N, so that now we can use our node tool. So we can select this handle here, and let's modify it to make it more similar to the shape below. We can do it with this one also. And now if we click our Select an Object tool, again, we can see how similar our shape is. And now the last shape that we want to trace is this one, this type of wave that we have here on the right, as it has straight lines, curves, but also a curve that goes in two different directions. So again, let's go take our pen tool and start clicking again. So click, Control key to get a straight line, click again, drag out our mouse, Control key to get a perfectly horizontal line, click again, Control key again, click, and now we can start with our curves. So we can start slowly. So let's choose a point here, click and drag a little bit like so. Then we could click here and then drag this one out. And don't worry again about it being perfect. We will go in and modify later. And then we can click here. And now you will notice that this has changed direction. It is straight again. So we will click a point up here, for example. So click and drag before releasing to create the curve in another direction. And keep going like so. Click and drag slightly, click, drag slightly, and then click to close. So now, obviously, this shape is imperfect. We can select N on our keyboard again to get the node tool and start fixing it up. So we can move this slightly like so. So now we have a pretty similar wave going on here, and we can see the difference with the one below. Some other useful tips to know with the pen tool. Let's take it again. When we start our first line, when we first start drawing, if we use the arrows on our keyboard, so the left and right, we can move the first node to where we want it to be, for example. So if we don't want it here, we can just use our arrows to move it in a different point. And if you don't like the node at all you need to do is select delete on your keyboard and it will disappear. And you can also do this a bunch of times in a row. So let's say I create a bunch of different lines, so each one will have a node. If I select delete multiple times, it will delete each segment one by a time. Also, if you have drawn a bunch of segments and you just want to start all over again, you can just press the escape button on your keyboard and again, the whole thing will disappear. If, for example, you're drawing an open path that doesn't need to be closed, so you just want it to be an open path like so, for example, and then select enter on our keyboard. So notice how now it just drew a path. You can also later close the path or extend it with your node tool activated. So select the node tool, select the path, and by bringing your cursor over one of these nodes, you can click it and then drag it to extend it and even drag it to another node to close it. And then you will have a closed path. Notice how it automatically joined this together into one closed path. But now let's go and look at the node tool more in detail. So as we saw before, we can find it here in our toolbar and we can select it, or we can press the N key on our keyboard. Or if we have another tool selected, we can just double click on one of our paths and the node tool will be selected. So to show how the node tool works and how the nodes act particularly, I have just created this very simple ovally looking shape. So if we select this oval with the node tool selected like so, you will be able to see the various handles and nodes. You can use these to adjust the shape like so, by clicking and moving them. But let's Ctrl Z to go back. And if we were to reselect this icon here, the show path outline, and deselect, you would still be able to see the handles. Let's just change the color of this oval very quickly. And the colors, so the stroke, let's make it a different color so that we can see the path a bit better, like so. So now if we select the show path icon, we're able to see the path, the outline of the path. This way it makes it easier to work with when it is visible. It is also possible to turn off the display of the bounding box that we see here around it by going to Preferences. So we can open them up selecting twice our selector tool. So the Preferences window opens up, and under Selector, per object selection queue, we will select none and then close preferences. So now if we select again, we will not see the bounding box around our shape. With this selector tool activated now that we have here in the toolbar, if we double click on our path, see how it automatically now changes to the node tool. So now we can start seeing more in detail the nodes and handles. To select a node, all we need to do is click on it like so, and notice that it has changed color. If we press Tab on our keyboard, it will select the following nodes. Instead, if we select Shift Tab on our keyboard, it will select the previous ones. If we want to select multiple nodes, all we need to do is select Shift and then click on the node that we also want to select, like so, and also Shift and click to deselect a node. It is also possible to drag a window to select multiple nodes, like so. And instead, if we press the Control key and the letter A, we can select all the nodes contemporarily. And just simply clicking away from the path, we will deselect them, or we can also click the Escape button. So let's just drag a window over these again, and then click Escape on our keyboard. And notice how they have been deselected. If you want to add a node instead, all we need to do is double click with our node tool on the path. So notice now that a node has been added without distorting the shape that we have here created. If you want to add a node instead right in the middle of two existing nodes, we need to select the two interested nodes, selecting Shift also on our keyboard. So click and click with the Shift key selected, and then we select Shift I on our keyboard, and it will place a node right in between them. If you keep pressing Shift I, it will keep adding nodes right in between. Again, Shift I, and notice how many nodes have been added right between the ones that were already existing. To delete a node, you can either select it and then press Ctrl Delete on your keyboard, but another option is to select it and just press Delete on the keyboard. The second option adjusts the handles and the shape to compensate for the loss of that node. So let's say it tries to preserve the original shape of the object. So we can try that again. I will select another one and just press Delete on the keyboard. And I'll do it one more time. So notice how it adjusts it to make sure the shape stays intact. Either way, when you delete a node, the path will stay closed since it was closed to begin with. To move a node, all you need to do is click and drag like so. Instead, if you want to only move in a horizontal or vertical manner, you can click and also select the Control key on your keyboard and then start dragging. And that way you can get a perfect horizontal or perfect vertical movement, like so. You can also use your arrows on your keyboard to nudge nodes 2 pixels at a time. So just selecting the arrow, these will move 2 pixels at a time. Instead, if we do the same but holding the Shift key, this will make the nodes move 10 times as far, or 20 pixels. If you want more precision in the position of the node, you can also use the X and Y values up here in the commands bar. So you can put in precise values here. So for example, 100 and 100. And now you have a specific position for your node. Notice that when you're using the node tool, you can't actually move the whole object. You can only work on the path, but you can't move the whole drawing that you have created. So if you have all the nodes selected, you need to select the space bar to switch to the selector tool. And that way you will be able to move the path and the drawing to wherever you want. And then you can just press the space bar on your keyboard again to go back to your node tool. Besides the position of a node, the handles also define the shape. So these right here. In the commands bar, we can find 4 different types of nodes. So these ones here, we have make selected nodes corner, make selected nodes smooth, make selected nodes symmetric, and make selected nodes auto smooth. So you can convert any selected node to any of these styles that we find up here in the commands bar. But we can already see the different ones in this shape. So this one, for example, has a diamond shaped node. These are called cusp nodes or corner nodes. So they can have 0 up to 2 handles. And if there are 2 handles, they will move independently of each other. So in this case, this node has 0 handles, but we can see this one, for example, we know it's a corner node because when we move our mouse and hover over it, if you will notice here in the bottom, a description will appear, corner node. So we know that this is a corner node. So let's select it. And in this case, this one has 2 handles. So as I said, these handles move independently of each other. So if I move one handle, the other one will not budge. It won't move at all. This one will stay exactly the same. This is the kind of node that you will use to make a sharp corner, like here, for example, or to completely change the direction of a path, like so. Smooth nodes instead are in the shape of a square, like this one. And you will see in the description below, it says smooth node. Smooth nodes have 2 handles that move in unison, but the lengths of the handles are independent. So if you move one, the other one will move too, but if you stretch one, the other one won't change its length, as you may notice. So they will both move, but if we stretch or shorten one, the length won't change in the other one. Smooth nodes, as you may see, make smooth curves where one segment meets the other. The next node that we can see here in the commands bar is the symmetric one. So let's take one of our nodes, and by selecting this option, we will make it a symmetric node. So the symmetric nodes are also shaped like squares, and they're similar to smooth nodes, but both the position and the length of the handles is linked. So if I move one, the other one will move too, and the same if I stretch it, the other one will stretch as well. So these are perfectly symmetrical, and whatever you do to one handle will happen to the other. Instead, if we were to transform this node, for example, into the last one, so auto smooth, let's select it. Notice the difference. The auto smooth node is shaped like a circle. So if you drag the node, the handles will automatically adjust, as INKSCAPE will try to keep this as smooth as possible. So whatever way I move it around, the other handle will try and stay as clean as possible so that the curve will stay smooth, like so. There are also shortcuts to convert from one type of node to another. So, for example, if I control and click on the node, it will cycle through the different types. So select Control on your keyboard and then click. It'll change, click again, and it changes again. So it will cycle through all the different style of nodes. Each node has its own shortcut. So for example, if I were to select this one, which is a corner node, and then select Shift S on my keyboard, it will transform into a smooth node. Instead, if I select Shift A, it will transform into a auto smooth node. Shift Y will make it into a symmetric node, and then Shift C will make it into a corner node. Instead, if you select Shift C again, the handles will be removed, like so. There's also an option in the commands bar up here to show and hide handles. So if you select a node like we have here and can't see any handles as we have just removed them, so if we can't view nodes, so like here for example, if these weren't visible, if the handles weren't visible, we would have to select this icon up here, show Bezier handles of selected nodes. So let's select it and now they will disappear. They have disappeared. And if we select it again, they will reappear. It is also possible to remove just a handle by control clicking on it and it has disappeared. And instead, if you want to add in a handle, all you need to do is click on the node, select Shift on your keyboard and drag. In this way, you will bring a handle back in. If we select the full stop key on our keyboard, this will increase the length of the handles like so. Instead, if we select the comma key on our keyboard, this will decrease the length of our handles like so. If you have a corner node like this one, if you press Shift, you will be able to rotate both of the handles in unison. So they will be able to move contemporarily at the same time. We can start talking about joining and splitting path segments. So let's go ahead and draw two paths like so. If we want to connect two separate segments like these two right here, first we need to select them both with our node tool. So let's select N on our keyboard to shift to our node tool. And then let's select Shift on our keyboard and select both of them contemporarily. And then we need to decide which of these nodes, so what part of these segments we want to join. So let's say we want to join these two ends. So what we need to do is drag a window over these two nodes right at the end here. To join them, all we need to do is select Shift and the letter J on our keyboard. And notice how they joined at the end, like so. Instead, if you want to keep the position of one of the segments, let's go back, selecting Ctrl Z on our keyboard. We will do the same thing. We will select both segments, like so. Then select the two nodes that we are interested in. And then all we need to do is place our cursor on the node of that segment without clicking it and then press Shift J again on our keyboard. So now this segment stayed in its original position and only this one moved to the right to join in. If you want to join segments but with a new segment so that we can preserve the position of these two, let's select the segments again. So click and shift contemporarily like so. And then again, select which nodes you want to connect. So let's say again, it's these two, drag a window over them. And then on your keyboard, select Alt J. And now notice how it has created a brand new segment to be able to join these two. If we want to break a path at a node, all we need to do is select Shift B where the node is. So Shift on our keyboard, letter B, and then you are able to drag the segment away, like so. Instead, if you want to delete a segment between two selected nodes, so let's say we want to delete this segment, you need to select the nodes that you're interested in, and then select Alt Delete on your keyboard. And that last segment will be deleted. You can also find all of these actions in the commands bar above up here. So we have, for example, join selected nodes, break path at selected nodes. We also have join selected end nodes with a new segment, and then delete segment between two non-endpoint nodes. So you see all of the options that we have just seen with the shortcuts are all up here. We can end the lesson here. If you have enjoyed this lesson, make sure to leave a like. If you have any questions or any suggestions, make sure to leave them in the comment box below. And if you want to give our channel some support, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for following along.